The ego isn't wrong, it's just unconscious. When you observe the ego in yourself, you are beginning to go beyond it. Don't take the ego too seriously. Above all, know that the ego isn't personal. It isn't who you are. If you consider the ego to be your personal problem, that's just more ego.
So I remember at the beginning when I was learning about the ego and trying to see it in myself, I was always making myself wrong for it and felt so much guilt and shame around having an ego and seeing my ego and stuff. But I've come to realize that that really is just more ego. I really think that it's about peeling back the layers of the onion, and the ego just has so many layers and it always tries to keep putting on more layers. And so I would always make it wrong when really I feel like the ego is just an evolutionary step. I think that it's a necessary part of like development that we need to go through, and now it's time for us to go beyond the ego. And I kind of compare it to an animal, like the ego to an animal, in that it basically wants to survive, right? So the ego will do whatever it takes to survive. So when we start becoming aware of ourselves, that is a big threat to the ego. And the reason why I say animalistic, in its nature of wanting to survive, is if you think of an animal, like when their survival is threatened, all they think about is themselves and how to survive. It's like this instinctual drive to be alive still. And I feel like that's kind of how the ego works, right? That when we feel threatened, whether it's psychological or physical, like the ego will do whatever it takes to survive. So when it comes to the psychological part, that's why, the ego thinks in black or white, life and death, and all that stuff. And so it's very extreme, I guess you could say, in how it thinks. And so when it comes to the ego, it does want to survive. And if you compare it to animals, I find that the two are very much more alike than they are different. So I don't feel like the ego is the enemy or anything like that. I really do think that it is an impersonal level that we need to pass. We need to go beyond it because it's not really necessary anymore. I think that we can definitely go through life being more conscious and not have to rely on the ego. And I think that if we treat it more of a neutral kind of level to kind of get past instead of making it wrong like I did at the beginning, I think we'll have a lot more peace with it. That the evolutionary journey doesn't have to be about making ourselves wrong, making ourselves bad, or feel guilty and shameful about it. Just being able to see it and go beyond it, I think, will just be much more effective than to kind of strengthen the ego more by thinking that we're wrong or that we're bad people for having an ego. So just remember, just like Eckhart says, the ego isn't wrong, it's just unconscious. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.